Sorry, we're 2 minutes late. Right, we have David, please. Good to see you, mate.
G'day. All right, kia ora team. So today I'm going to be specifically talking about developer contribution remissions, although I cover a few other topics in my submission on that, so like ring fencing, for example. So back in 2020, the first stores at the Northlink development in Papanui opened. Before Northlink came along, Langdons Road was pretty quiet, but then pretty quickly, because Northlink's basically just a giant car park, pretty quickly quite a few cars started showing up, and the intersection between Langdons and Greers Road ended up so congested that it needed to be fixed. When the consent was granted for that new centre, there was a condition added that intersection would need to be upgraded. And somehow, at some point, that condition was waived. And so the full cost, well, I'm not sure if it was the full cost, but at least most of the cost of that intersection upgrade fell to the ratepayer. I've heard the argument that in that case, the developer will have paid a big pile of money in developer contributions. And so that sort of offsets the cost of that. However, if developers are able to lawyer up and get out of their developer contributions and get out of their resource consent conditions, that puts us in a situation where the cost of growth, infrastructure growth, could fall back to the ratepayer. And given that developers are in this for a profit motive for the most part, this essentially represents a pretty big subsidy to developers from the ratepayer, which I consider to be unfair. If we look ahead, there's a new Woolworths that's been proposed in Edgware, which is great. It's nice to have new supermarkets. Councillors, you're hopefully going to be aware that this is just 2 blocks away from the downstream effects management plan area from the Christchurch Northern Corridor. And there's a court order in place that means that if traffic increases in that area above a certain threshold, you are legally obligated to step in and fix those problems. The DEMP doesn't really care what's actually causing the increase in traffic. It only cares whether there is an increase in traffic. It doesn't care whether it's actually the result of the highway or whether it's the result of a supermarket. And similar to Northlink, most of the proposed site is car parks, so I think it's fair to say that it will have an impact on traffic in that area. There's been a transport assessment provided as part of their resource consent process that claims that there will be a minimal impact on traffic, but if we compare that to the Pack and Save that's on Papanui Road, I think it's fair to say there will be a pretty significant impact on traffic. So I think it would be really bad if we ended up in a situation where there was no resource consent condition requiring them to mitigate these problems, and they have the ability to get out of developer contributions. Because at that point, the City Council might find themselves in an awkward position having to upgrade quite a lot of infrastructure in the area with no money to pay for it from the developer, and it would come out of the general rate. So for that reason, I fully support the proposal to not permit remissions on developer contributions in the city. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Good. Tyler, please.
Kia ora, David. Just got a question around the more social aspects of DC remissions. Do you think that there could be exemptions in regards to providing to the well-being or the health of the ratepayer themselves? Say, for example, a cancer society, something like that, medical facility.
There's probably a few situations where you could justify exemptions on those grounds. I think one of the ones that came up was Māori developments by iwi and that kind of thing. I think there's probably a good argument to be made there about that, but I think in the bulk of things, like if it's just a housing development or something and they're trying to get out of it in order to increase their profit margin, I don't think that's fair to the ratepayer. So, yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, that's no more questions. That's very well put across. Thank you very much.
Thanks.